Welcome into the DePaud, a DePaul Hoops podcast brought to you by Homefield. Go check out homefieldapparel.com today. Pick up some of the most comfortable, high-quality DePaul gear that you can get, featuring all your favorite Blue Demon logos. My personal favorite, I know a lot of people love Billy Blue Demon. My personal favorite is the baby with the pitchfork, baby demon with the pitchfork. So go check out homefieldapparel.com today. Use promo code DePaud at checkout to pick up 15% off your first order at homefieldapparel.com. Promo code DePaud at checkout. That's DEPAUD at checkout for 15% off your first order. On today's episode, we've got the guys from the Full Court Press Pod. Really great time talking about the different coaches that have been named, be it by fans, be it by insiders, what have you. We talk all the different coaching options that DePaul has at this point in time, and then we'll jump into mailbag questions. But first, let's start the show.
Got a McAdoo look to his shot.
Spins, fade away. Yes, sir. Chandler hits the three.
Oh, tough shot. Giving it up to Reed.
Welcome into the DePaud, a DePaul Hoops podcast brought to you by Homefield. Go check out homefieldapparel.com today and use promo code DePaud at checkout for 15% off your first order. Like I said at the beginning, our episode today is jam-packed. Really great time talking with the guys from the Full Court Press Pod. Both are DePaul alumni, and we talk all things coaching search as far as who we've heard and who we want. Really fun time. Those guys were really good to talk to. So make sure you go check out their podcast. It's the Full Court Press Pod. Go check it out. They've got interviews with coaches, players, all from the college basketball ranks. Really fun guys to listen to talk college hoops, just real college basketball sickos, as they say. So go do that. And then right after that, on the flip side, we will get into the mailbag questions that you guys sent in on Twitter, and we'll answer some of those for you. So let's jump into our talk with the guys from the Full Court Press Pod about the DePaul coaching search. All right, welcome on to the DePaud, the guys from Full Court Press. I wanted to give you guys an opportunity to talk about your show to start and introduce yourselves to my audience. So why don't you go ahead and do that?
Sam, you ready?
Have at it, LT.
DEMON. I've always wanted to do that.
I've done that before after several beers and a few shots, running down Sheffield and through Lincoln Park. I think that was the last time we got a postseason win. But
yes.
Man, that's a great fight song. But thanks for having us on, John. Man, we appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Yeah, thanks for having us on. We are DePaul alumni. Sam is a student athlete. I was a coach back in the day. We have the Full Court Press podcast, a college basketball experience. So we talk college basketball all day, every week. So we've had some coaches that I know who you want to talk about that we've gotten to know personally and stuff like that. So thanks for having us.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of wild to see two guys with a DePaul background talking college hoops, especially with how things have gone the past 20 years. But no, I appreciate you guys taking the time. I know you've got a lot of good stories, a lot of things to talk about when it comes to coaches. And I wanted to kind of jump right into it because the fact that Tony Stubblefield was relieved of his duties mid-season, I think that, you guys talked about it a little bit on your show. It was surprising, but it was also, the way Dwayne handled it, I think was a positive, and not positive for everyone. So I wanted to hear your guys' thoughts on that to start.
So it's funny because if it was the old AD who we know personally, he'd still be coaching. So for another 2 years.
It's
So
sad,
I think,
sad to say, but yeah.
yeah,
you're
but
right.
you know, good human being. I mean,
Yeah.
she was my boss for a couple years. So, what I will tell you, and I'll let Sam talk a little bit more because he knows PV personally. I have a restraining order from 2525 North Sheffield Avenue. But anyway, so he kind of had to make that move, okay? Because ADs, and I've got friends that are ADs and what have you personally. ADs are judged on two things: facilities improvements and coaching hires. So, you know, Wintrust was built under Genie, technically. So PV hired Stubblefield. So he's got to get it right. So he had to make the move. And it's always good to be the first one per se, because then you get to talk about it, the buzz and stuff like that. So,
Sure.
you know,
Sam?
Yeah, no, I mean, I agree with you, John. I mean, this is it was the right move for PV to make. You know, I actually guessed that he would do it like the first week after the season was over, like before he did it. And then when he made the announcement that Stubblefield's been terminated from his position, I thought he handled it incredibly professionally. You know, we don't wish anything bad upon anyone, especially someone who worked as hard as Stubbs did for the program. But yeah, I mean, the goals weren't met. And so it allowed DePaul to kind of get first in line for the spotlight for the coaching carousel, you know, and whether certain coaches are interested, I'm sure we'll get into that, you know, but yeah, no, I was very happy to see the move made as early as it was this season.
Sure. And I think too, like it's the commitment to that we haven't seen in the athletic department to make that move midseason. Like you had alluded to, LT, when you first started talking about it, it would have been another 2 years if it was previous. So yeah, I think that we're moving in the right direction as far as the athletic department goes as a whole, modernizing it, things like that, especially with the new facilities upgrade that they've been talking about. So why don't we just jump right into it? I'm going to start off by naming a couple names that I think are a little bit on the lesser end of likelihood that they become the next DePaul head coach, but an interesting one nonetheless. I'll start with Chris Holtmann. What are you guys' thoughts on him?
he just got fired.
LT, you're in Ohio, man. What's the buzz going on?
He just got fired. Okay. And this is like this dream big campaign. If we're gonna dream big, let's get a winner. Okay. And I'm not saying Chris Holtmann's not a winner, but look where he came from before. He was at Butler. Okay. Butler has been, I mean, when I played college sports in the late 90s, Butler was in the Midwestern Collegiate, and they were good back then. So yeah, Holtmann just doesn't excite me. Great coach, just doesn't excite me. We need someone that's going to win the press conference. And I mean, you told me, John, about the Stubblefield press conference. I mean, I want to get excited. Holtmann does not excite me personally.
Sure.
Yeah, no, I'm in that same group. I think Holtmann would have been a great snag after Butler. You know, I think one of the things that we need to consistently talk about in this DePaul coaching search is who can win with the resources we have, right? And just manage expectations based on that. And if we're struggling winning games with Ohio State's resources, even though they are football dominant program, you still have a lot more resources there than you do at DePaul today, right? And I know they're going to be looking to change that in the future, but yeah, I think you need somebody who's going to win the big city as well, somebody who has experience in a metropolitan area, whether it's New York, Chicago, something like that. And I don't think Holtmann really has that background and that winning experience on limited resources.
Yeah, and I think too with Holtmann, he hasn't really built a program. Yeah. He's come right after Brad Stevens. He's come right after Thad left, I think, or whoever was right there before him. So there's not that experience of, okay, here we are on the bottom. We got to get to the middle, then we got to get to the top, right? So I think those are valid points from what you guys said as far as like winning the press conference, the city aspect, the blue collar nature of DePaul, that while they're in Lincoln Park, they play over by Chinatown. You know, that blue collar resonates within the Chicago.
Better than the Rosemont, baby.
Hey, I can't complain. I spent a lot of my college career driving back and forth from Allstate Arena.
Allstate, yeah. No, you got to win the city, and whoever that coach is needs to understand how to win a city. So
And Sam, they don't necessarily need to be from Chicago, but they
No.
need to understand what DePaul is, because DePaul is really unique. We're not this sleepy, Catholic school under the L anymore. I mean, they brought in Dwayne Peavy to win from Kentucky. Kentucky, they care about one thing in Kentucky. They don't care about church. They don't care about family. They care about basketball.
Mhm.
Absolutely. No, I think and when you talk to Dwayne, you hear that, right? Like, I know a lot of people like to say, okay, well, dream big, the dream big campaign, and where has that gotten us so far? Well, I think it's gotten us to talking about a new facility. It's gotten us to this pool of coaches that we're talking about right now, and that we will be talking about, is completely light years ahead of what we talked about when he brought in Stubbs. So I think that's a really good positive, boding well for us in the future. So we talk blue collar. We talk about winning the press conference. I think one of the hottest names right now in college basketball is Josh Schertz, and I want to hear you guys.
It's not. No, he's not. He just lost a game. He
can't
lost 2
have-
in a row. People think he's garbage now. I mean, I read it. I see on Twitter. Oh, Schertz is garbage. Come on, man. Like, he's a great coach.
What people don't understand that put that out there is that Josh Schertz, I mean, Indiana State hasn't been. They're in our boat. They haven't been relevant since '79. Like,
yeah. We listen, when we were there, I knew, I was friends with a lot of the coaches. I knew them well. I knew Coach Lado. I knew Coach Oppenheimer, Coach Tyler. I mean, Coach Cross. I was at UIC with Coach Cross. We were good. And all we had to do was pay Lado. That's all we had to do.
Yeah. Lado 1.0.
Lado 1.0. Yeah, let's clarify that.
2.0. Listen, I'm not going to go there, but listen, when you have coaches who would confide in you as a coach that they would complain about the shoestring budget for basketball, you got something wrong there, man. I mean, I remember, like Sam and I talked this. I remember I was at the Big East press conference, and the first thing I said, and I might even have said it to Sam, was, man, when we announced we're going to the Big East, I said to myself, or said out loud, man, this is great for Coach Bruno in women's basketball.
Yeah.
I think that.
I mean, different mentalities and stuff like that than when we moved into the Big East to where it's gone now. And John, you nailed it with like with PV's dream big campaign and stuff. Like, it gets us talking, right? And like, it gets me excited that the person in charge.
We've been talking for 15 years, Sam.
Well, I mean, PV's only been there for a few years, so
it's still his fault.
It's so good. Yeah. So LT, what do you think about Schertz? I know we're both big fans.
So Cavassier McCauley, he took him back.
Yeah.
Here's my thing. If you can build, okay, from a coaching standpoint, Division II is really difficult. Like, you talk about low mid majors, like this is low mid majors. Okay. If you can build a program from nothing and build it into like almost a national championship, you're a good coach.
Mm-hmm.
You're a great coach. I think Schertz is, I mean, it's a great dude. He's from New York City. He's a tennis player, he would be good. And I think Sam and I both agree, and I won't put words in his mouth, which I sometimes do, is I think he's going to get better offers than DePaul. I'm being honest with you. My only concern with him is NIL, because we had a coach that were nameless, who's a very good coach, has coached in the Big East as an assistant, is a head coach and winning in a mid-major. He said the big thing about DePaul is their NIL is a joke. And if you don't have NIL, you ain't going to win.
Not in the Big East.
Here's the thing with the NIL. Real quick, I want to touch on the NIL because the infrastructure is all there. You just got to get the money in there. They have the infrastructure.
Don't get Sam started on this one.
I agree with you, John. It's there for the picking. I mean, you're in Chicago, in the city. Like, you either need a head coach who can walk into some boardrooms and get that NIL money because it's there, right? Yep. Or you need to set up a separate program for NIL at DePaul. But the money is there. Like, you just have to have the right pitch to go get it, right? And so do I think it's going to get there the first year of a new coach? No, but I think that has to be a top 2 campaign of why the coach would move in there, because you can move from the basement of the Big East to a top 5 program in 2 or 3 years with the right NIL program and the right coach who understands the transfer portal. I 100% believe that. So the opportunity there for like a Shirts to come in and do that, I think is awesome. And, I also think you have to take into consideration the current contracts that some of these coaches we're talking about have right now. Shirts' buyouts only, I think it's $250,000,
right,
which we can afford at DePaul.
We can.
Right. Exactly. Where I do agree with LT that he's probably going to get other options, whether they're more appealing to it. It's kind of like, okay, do you see an easier job somewhere, or are you willing to kind of strap on your boots and go to work in downtown Chicago? Right. What I learned about our interview with Shirts, guy is incredibly blue collar. Right. I mean, the guy wasn't a basketball player growing up or anything like that. Like, just loved coaching. Right. Bounced around to a couple places. I think he lived out of like a mobile home while he was like an assistant manager or coach or something like that. That New York kind of East Coast mentality. I think his mindset would fit in great with Chicago. He's already a Chicago name when it comes to recruiting players out of there. Like, one of his top players, Robbie Avila, who we had on our podcast and whatnot. Chicago guy, right?
Streets, yeah, Mean Streets AAU, yep.
Absolutely, man. And I think Shirts can get, if Shirts took the job, if he was offered the job and it was appealing enough for him to take, I think his transfer portal in year 1 would be one of the best in the country, especially one of the best in the Midwest who would follow him there.
No, I think Robbie Avila, I mean, he's been amazing. I think that guy probably follows Shirts wherever he goes, or ends up at U of I or something like that, where Tim Anderson, the Mean Streets deep roots are. But
for sure.
Yeah, I think I really like Shirts. I've been following him probably since 10 or so games ago, because that was when I first got onto, figuring out who we wanted next. And just the style of play he coaches, and these guys are like 3, they're not 4 stars, they're not 5 stars, they're guys that
like 2.
DePaul's getting today, right? Like,
right.
And he coaches them up, and he gets them, and he puts them in the best position to win, and all the metrics love him, which is as we've learned today, or as we've learned, that when it comes tournament time, the net matters, Ken Pom matters, all that stuff. So I think it'll be interesting to see if we want to take. It's unfortunate because they see, generally speaking, he's seen as a risk because he hasn't done it here at this level.
Can't be any worse than what we had. I mean, God, at least, I don't. Oh man.
No, I agree. I mean, I think if you're asking me, my favorite is Josh Shirts, but there's other names that I think are going to get looked at a lot more. But LT, what about you on Josh Shirts?
I mean, I love him. I mean, he loves bad chili. He's willing to do what he had. Oh man, we had him on the podcast and he was great. I think he would win the press conference. I think he would do a really good job. I just worry. Listen, more jobs are going to be popping up pretty soon. Yep. Right? DePaul, Ohio State, Oklahoma State's going to open up. I don't think Louisville's going to open up. I think he's got another year. I think Michigan's going to open up. Who knows about Michigan State and Tom Izzo and retiring, because you're kind of seeing that kind of just, you never thought Nick Saban was going to retire,
right?
Or like Jay Wright. I mean, Jim Boeheim. So I think the dominoes are going to fall, and it's going to be, Josh Shirts is going to be up there. Now, if he doesn't win the conference tournament and they don't get in the tournament, maybe it's a more viable option for DePaul.
Certainly. Yeah. And that's always been the one thing. Like, now he's lost 2 in a row, right? Is he going to get, like you said, is he going to get too many eyes on him, especially like if a Vanderbilt opens up or something like that?
He is not going to Vanderbilt. I'm telling you, DePaul is better than Vanderbilt.
Okay. All right. Well, I just know that Lincoln Memorial, Tennessee, the ties to that area. That's where
right.
I'm coming from with that. So,
right.
all right. So let's talk about a name that's a little bit more familiar to Chicago, Porter Moser, and he's over at Oklahoma. From what Oklahoma fans are saying, there's a rift between him and Oklahoma fans, just on Twitter and seeing things like that. So, what do you guys think about Moser and his fit for DePaul? Buyout aside.
Okay.
Well, that's if they negotiate a buyout down to like not, I don't see DePaul paying $6 million.
I agree. That's why I said buyout aside, because you can't have this conversation seriously if you're going to say, okay, we have no NIL money. We're trying to raise money for this facility. And oh, by the way, we're going to pay $6 million before a coach even comes into play or into coach at DePaul. So I think that's the key is getting that buyout to a more palatable level.
Yeah, I mean, I really like Porter Moser as a coach. I think he would do well back in Chicago and all. I really just never saw him as like a college town kind of coach, and yeah, he's kind of family first, and him with his wife Megan and 4 kids and stuff like that. Like, I do think it's hard to just kind of bounce around so often, so I think he's looking for that stability, and so I think he's going to try to stay at Oklahoma with a firm deal and whatnot. And then you also got to look at he's a extremely devout Catholic. So LT, you can say we're not the little Catholic school under the L and stuff like that, but there's we've talked to a couple coaches who have hinted at the appeal of like a DePaul or a St. John's or something like that, just because of their personal religion with them and their family, And so and Porter Moser is an extremely devout Catholic, and so hey, if we can play those cards, that'd be great. I don't think he's a great fit at Oklahoma. Do I see him leaving there after this season? I don't.
Okay. Yeah. No, go ahead. No, please. I want to hear.
If there's really here's the problem with social media, okay? And I've been in those meetings, and this is before social media, but nothing's changed. The AD hired him, right? That's his guy, okay? So if the AD hires you and that's your guy, the AD cannot really get rid of you that soon, or you're gonna have egg in your face.
Sure.
Okay. Now, Oklahoma is a football school first and foremost. DePaul does not have that luxury. We don't have baseball. We don't have football. It's all about basketball. And women's basketball is just with Coach Bruno. I mean, he's been there 100 years. He might coach longer than Rick Pitino. Doug Bruno might be coaching his great-great-grandkids at DePaul. I'm being honest with you. I mean, the guy loves it. He's nuts. He's a great coach. I mean, he played at DePaul. I don't know. I don't put much weight into Twitter because it's everybody's trying to get clickbait and all that stuff. Do I see him at DePaul? I do, actually. I do. But a couple things have to happen. He's got to now. If Oklahoma really wants him gone, they'll negotiate that buyout to down to make it appeasing. Like if it's $2 million, I say DePaul sucks it up and pays it.
Sure. I mean, that's what Bobby Hurley's buyout is. So,
well, at the rate Bobby Hurley's going out, his buyout's going to be 0 by the end of the week.
No, I think you're right as far as the buyout goes. I think he's already got the ties to Chicago that everyone that's over 45 wants to have in this next coach for DePaul. I don't, I think that basketball has become more borderless than anything, and you don't necessarily have to have ties to the region as much as you used to, which is why I think Josh Schertz would work here. He's got a couple ties, but I think Moser is interesting from the perspective that he's done it in Chicago before. Loyola wasn't much, they were decent before him, but they weren't much better than DePaul was at that point in time. I think too, with OU moving to the SEC, that move may be more likely, especially if certain names become available, on the carousel. But I think I would take Porter Moser in a heartbeat if it was at the right price.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I don't disagree. I mean, all these coaches you're talking about I would take, because we're in such a bad situation. We need to believe in someone as much as they'll believe in us as DePaul fans.
Absolutely. So we touched on Bobby Hurley. You said he might be out of a job by the end of the week. I think he's the most. I think he's the most interesting, and also I think he's the number one fallback candidate in the clubhouse. If we miss on some of the bigger names that we've talked about, like Josh Schertz or Porter Moser.
Yeah, I agree with that. It's Bobby Earl. He's 52 years old right now. He's had some success in Division One, lacking at Arizona State right now. Arizona State's moving to a better basketball conference next year. I think it's going to come down to like what commitment does Arizona State want to make to their basketball program. I think Hurley belongs in a big city, right? I think he belongs in a blue collar city from what like his last name represents from both his father and, what his brothers accomplished and things like that. When I started to look at, who would follow him as assistant coaches, right? Because I think that was the biggest hurdle when he was interested in the job in 2015. The rumor was he wanted to bring his coaching staff from Buffalo, and he couldn't get that negotiated, right? And so bringing his assistant coaches from Arizona State, you're bringing Chicago guys, right? Yep. You're bringing Nick Irvin from, his dad's Mac Irvin fire team, which is basically, quote unquote Chicago royalty when it comes to basketball. Nick Irvin's coached guys like Tim Hardaway Jr., Jalen Brunson, Jabari Parker, Julio Okafor, and then you also have another assistant, Jermaine Kimbrough, who spent 2 years at Loyola and like knows Chicago, things like that. So I know, John, you said like college basketball is more or less borderless right now. But guys who, and I agree with that, but guys who know the town, know the city, can get meetings just like that right off the bat, bring some respect and have some honor back to the program. And then you have Hurley in the same conference as his brother, right? Which I love that idea. And I think Dan Hurley, when he was in Chicago, like last week, or like they brought it up and he just kind of brushed it off and whatnot,
Yeah.
But I love that idea of having two Hurleys in the same basketball centric conference. That's where they belong. I do think he'd be a fallback. I don't think he's as good of a coach as some of the other guys we've mentioned, but I think like, just that kind of like blue grit, blue collar attitude, like it's something that's needed at DePaul. And I don't think it's a bad choice at all.
But I think also too, Sam, and Sam's a big Bobby Hurley fan as a player. I never was, but the thing, if you watch him coach a game, in-game coaching, he's in it. Mm-hmm. Like you look at the last four coaches we've had at DePaul, it's like they're out of it. Like they're just like Purnell, Wainwright, Lato 2.0, Stubblefield. I mean, it's like watching the walk of the like living dead or something. I think with Hurley, he's animated, his arms are going. I mean, I think he even slaps the floor still.
Probably.
My biggest problem with Moser and Hurley and some of these other guys and Holtman is they're going from not winning situations to now you're taking a step down to DePaul. I personally would rather have a Schertz or a couple other names we'll mention that we'll talk about that we personally have gotten to know and interviewed. But I mean, I think Hurley would not be. I don't think Moser or Hurley would be bad options.
Yeah, I think the one thing, the counter of that whole, coming from losing situations, they're more they're more football focused institutions. Whereas you come here, those guys are basketball runs through their blood. And I think that's the difference, is they're going to come into a place where basketball is king, where basketball is focused on, and that's it, especially now with what PV's doing and his administration's doing, where they'll have more if they hit their goals of the $2-3 million in NIL that they're talking about, that'll rival what they've had at OU or Arizona State by a lot.
Yeah, but Arizona State, you heard Bobby Hurley come out a couple weeks ago that he lost 2 to 3 players because of NIL. I mean,
That's what I'm saying. Like DePaul, if they hit the goals of the 2 to 3 million,
if they hit,
well, they're doing that with that
That's
new
the
Blue
right.
Grit collective.
Yeah.
That's tax deductible and things like that. So, yeah, I think that the basketball centric nature of this position is extremely appealing, more so than someone who's going to be pushed around by football because football money is king. Understand that.
100%. Yeah, 100%. And I think if whoever takes the job and whoever does well in this position is going to become a celebrity in one of the best cities in the world.
Absolutely.
And that to me, like somebody with an ego like a Hurley or somebody like that, they will want that, right? And I'm not saying ego is a bad thing or anything like that, but you need to understand that if you come in and you win at DePaul in downtown Chicago, you will become a celebrity in the city very quickly.
No, I 100% agree.
Yeah.
So that was my 4 that I wanted to talk about. I want to hear a little bit more with your guys' lists and what you guys have to say as far as other options and other potential candidates.
Sam, you
LT,
want to start?
why don't you start us off?
Okay. Well, here's the thing: our list changes by the minute.
Makes
I'm
sense.
just
So does
being honest with you, because here's the thing. I mean, we've and we're not bragging by any means, but we've interviewed a lot of these coaches that are potential candidates, and it's funny because we just had Will Wade. We interviewed Will Wade right before this, and Shadia Wells, who's their leading scorer at McNeese State, and he actually brought up DePaul, which is kind of comical. And I got really excited. Sam was like, "Oh, God!" You got
really excited.
No, I mean, let's be honest. I mean, this guy's like the hot name everywhere you go. I mean, he's turned around a program from 11-23 to 23 and what are they 5, 23 and 3? I can't remember.
He's won the Big East regular season, like won some games in the NCAA tournament. Like, yeah, I mean, he's the best. He has the best resume out of any mid-major coach.
Yeah. So here's how he brought it up. So he was talking about a special assistant coach to him. And he doesn't do any of his Twitter or anything. It's just a guy. And he actually came on his door and said that, DePaul and Will Wade and stuff like that. And he's like, dude, well, I got really excited. And the tidbit he shared with us is his brother-in-law. Was it his brother or brother-in-law, Sam?
I think it was his brother.
His brother lives in Chicago and is a professor at Loyola.
Interesting.
Yeah.
But he got super hyped on that. It's if DePaul could get, I mean, whoever gets Will Wade is going to get a great coach, and that's for sure. The thing, like Will Wade, he just signed a contract extension a couple weeks ago. I don't think his offers are going to be like at blue blood programs that, like, in all honesty, like you're going to get like an Izzo retiring in a year or two or something like that. Something in the Big East, Michigan, something like it's. But the fact that like he brought it up was nice to hear, where he was like, yeah, like I learned about the DePaul job opening up the day it happened. And like my staff was asking me about it, his staff at McNeese State and everything. And I'm like, okay, like that's why you make that termination in the middle of the season. Right. So getting credit. So people start talking about it. People start thinking about it. So yeah, Will Wade's an incredible coach. I mean, he's proven that at multiple levels now, even at the highest level in the SEC. But I don't think he's a realistic candidate for the job.
Yeah, that's kind of where I'm at. I would love him. I think that, yeah, absolutely, I'd take him in a heartbeat kind of deal. But I don't see him in a city either. I mean, the McNeese State like. They had that cowboy thing with him riding up on a horse. You can't do that in Chicago. You just can't.
No,
you can. You just get arrested.
It's and it's pretty like we've spoken to a couple coaches. Like you just like 10 minutes in, you're just like you're never leaving the South when you talk to some of these guys. Yep. Like that's where their family is. That's where they went to school. Like. And that's who they're going to be fighting for, and doing stuff. But he's an interesting name, and he'll be a fun one to watch. For sure where he ends up.
Certainly.
So yeah.
The one I'm going to throw out is there's a couple I'm going to throw out, and Sam can throw out some more and stuff like that. So no one's talking about Coach Steve Lutz. Okay. He's at Western Kentucky. He won 2 years in a row. He turned around Texas A&M Corpus Christi, had him dancing. He was an assistant for 4 or 5 years at Purdue. He recruited Zach Edey, and he was a coach at Creighton when they moved to the Big East too. You know, he and Western Kentucky is good, and he's Catholic too, which I don't know is good or bad.
That's a name I haven't heard of brought up around DePaul. So like, yeah, I mean, that's he's got an interesting pedigree and an interesting laundry list of, an interesting resume as well. So especially with the Zach Edey, Purdue, I mean, Indiana's a great place to recruit basketball players as well. You're obviously going to go up against Indiana and Notre Dame, but still, Northwest Indiana's very much gettable.
Yeah, if Lutz can finish the year strong at Western Kentucky, like he'll be a name to watch, And he mentioned on the record that I think his family's still in Texas, Corpus Christi, right? And so like they didn't move with him to Western Kentucky and stuff like that. So it's but he loves it at Western Kentucky and the Hilltoppers there and like what he's done to the program there. So I don't know if he's just kind of waiting a season or two to see how it works out for him there or not, but he's a coach to watch for sure. So who else you got, LT?
Let's talk about Akron. John Gross. I don't know if he'd leave, and I don't know if DePaul would want him. He had a rough start at Illinois. I get it. Won at OU, went to a Sweet 16, went to Illinois. It was a horrible situation. I think he had 3 or 4 ADs in the 5 years he was there. You can't win there. Okay. Great he had Lauren Jackson Jr. I mean, Lauren Jackson Sr. is part of basketball royalty in Chicago. He has got Akron rolling, like absolutely rolling. I don't know if he'd leave. He's got high school kids in the area. He's an interesting one in my eyes. Another guy that Sam's going to roll his eyes at that we've had on the podcast is from Bradley. He's a Marquette graduate. Coached at UWGB.
It's the same thing like with Chris Holtman and Butler, right? Like I don't want that. I don't want that tie back to a conference rival. It's silly and it's so small minded, but I don't want that. And I like Wardle. And I think I said that like 5 times. Yeah, I don't want that. Yeah. I think Wardle's he's a very good coach. And I do believe that there's a little bit of animosity towards Marquette because he was passed over for a job previously. So okay, maybe I do want it. But I don't know.
Yeah.
I think he's a distant fallback. I think it's kind of like, hey, if everything else goes to shit and we just keep getting no's, then you're going to have to get a guy like Wardle,
They'll say yes.
Has had some success. Yeah. And I don't even know if he'd say yes, it's like, I mean, the 2 guys you just mentioned, you've got like Gross and Wardle. I mean, take Gross. I mean, Gross is leading the team who's number 1 in the MAC right now, most likely to go dancing, like, are you giving up spots to go play in the NCAA tournament for the next couple years to bring a team out of the basement?
Right.
And that's where I have a hard time with some of these head coaches who are like first in their mid-major conference. It's like they're either gonna wait for the opportunity or they're gonna keep going to the tournament every year.
Exactly.
Or keep playing for it. And so that's where I have a hard time with a couple of these guys, just because their names being thrown out and stuff like that, because especially a guy like Gross, who has kind of seen the big show at Illinois and whatnot. And he's kind of like, I'm pretty happy at Akron. And I'm playing for a conference tournament every year. I'm recruiting guys. Like I'm able to keep some guys, develop guys like Enrique Freeman and Ali, who's now come back. And I mean, that says a lot about him as a coach. And to be able to start all new, like I think that'd be a really hard push for somebody like Gross. Wardle, like I already said, like I think he's a fallback guy. I think he's a good locker room coach. I think he's a good on the court coach. I don't think he's the guy who can win over downtown Chicago. I don't think he's the guy who can go into a boardroom and convince people to go pitch in for NIL and stuff like that. I don't think he's going to do well in the transfer portal to compete in the Big East, but good guy and good coach for sure.
Well,
Uh,
I
no,
think the thing is, sorry, John, let me just say this quickly. The thing is NIL is very pertinent in this search. Okay.
Mhm.
It's probably the most pertinent thing this time for DePaul. And the problem is when you're looking at mid-major coaches, a lot of them don't do NIL like we need them to. So
Yeah.
this is like a foreign animal, a beast, and what have you. So Sam's got a guy, okay, and he convinced me, which he's convinced me of some other dumber stuff we've done in our lives together. But there's a guy who's an assistant or associate head coach, and his name is not being thrown around at all. I mean, I haven't seen it anywhere. Sam, who we got?
No, I mean, I'm just a big Kamani Young fan. He's the associate head coach at UConn. He's got a national championship under his belt now. I think associate head coach doesn't mean anything unless your head coach is going to be retiring sometime soon. I don't think anybody thinks Hurley's going to be retiring anytime soon at UConn. And so I love Kamani Young. I think out of all the names being thrown around, like putting him in the mix to someone who could do well on day one, not just with the NIL. He comes from New York City. He is one of the most, if not the most, highly respected assistant coaches in the entire country, nonetheless, the Big East. All the players in the Big East know him and love him. Like, he's one of the best recruiters in the Big East. What he could potentially do if he was offered and accepted the job at DePaul, I think those are the two keywords, he could dominate that Big East transfer portal in year one just because and we would have a completely new starting 5, 10 guys on the team, which I think is needed. No disrespect to the current players. They're playing their ass off right now. I loved watching the game a couple days ago. But like what Kamani Young could do, and I know we want head coaching experience because of what's happened in the past with Stubblefield. Like I want to throw that out the window because like I've already said, like I don't see a lot of head coaches who are good head coaches really find this job appealing, in all honesty.
No,
So.
I think that's an interesting one, especially coming off of a national championship and doing what they're doing this year. I mean, thus far has been. It's like I was talking with someone actually just walking out of the last game versus UConn, and the guy turned to me, he goes, "You think they're going to do it again?" I said, "Yeah, I'm pretty confident that they will." And he goes, how? I said, well, they're in that way of like, you look at baseball teams that have repeated or football teams that have repeated. They're not rebuilding, they're reloading. And every time that you think about Klingon, he's just a more versatile Sonogo, and he's developed into a really good player. So yeah, I think that potentially coming off of a deep March run this year, because anything could happen in March. Kamani Young would be a stellar name if it was kicked around the DePaul halls as the next head coach.
But do you think, John, and also Sam too, and I know Sam and I have talked about this. So PV went and hired Stubblefield, who I believe was the associate head coach at Oregon. Okay. Do you think he's going to take that risk? Like, my worry is he's going to call Kentucky and try to get like a Bruiser Flint or Orlando Antigua. Like, those guys just don't excite me. I'm sorry.
No, I would agree. I mean, I think you're right. I mean, that's the same reason why I don't think they'll take the quote unquote risk on shirts, but like, and go for someone who's done it before, even if they are coming out of a losing situation. And I think that's the reality of the situation, is that you're looking for a guy with a low floor, a high floor and a low ceiling to get them to the point where this next hire, you could take a risk on a Josh Schertz or someone like a Kamani Young, who isn't necessarily proven by fundamental standards, but who has a high upside potentially, and who could be that, next big thing. So that's my take on it.
It's like we're going to settle for the Tuesday night girlfriend. She ain't pretty enough to take her out Friday or Saturday night.
Hey, but if that Tuesday night girlfriend's Bobby Hurley, I mean, I guess, hey, I'll take it. I mean, he's been to what, 3 or 4. I can't remember, 3 or 4. Yeah, 3, and it would have been 4 without COVID being canceled.
3 out of the last 7.
Yes,
okay,
and I mean, you can't sure they're, I think one was a what do you call it, play-in game, or what they used to call playing
Yeah,
games.
whatever. Who cares? It's still the tournament.
Exactly.
Man.
And
you
you're like,
give me that chance. If I hear the words DePaul's on the bubble, like I'm popping champagne. Like, I don't even have to go to the tournament next year or the year after. Like, just show some improvement. And I mean, I feel like we've already hit on it, but yeah, for sure, Bobby Hurley would be a great pick, and at least you would have a guy who just die hard, like has blue blood basketball like in his veins, and like it's he wants to create a legacy, and I think it's just been a bad fit, in all honesty, at Arizona State.
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah, but Arizona State is, I think, anywhere where football's king. Like Arizona, I mean, Lute Olson built that program, right? Arizona State has always struggled. I mean, they had James Harden, but they weren't really good. Like they were good, but they weren't really good.
Right.
I think he needed to go wherever he could go at that time after Buffalo. You heard the rumors that he was having financial trouble with horse racing and stuff like that. So, you dance with a girl that wants to dance with you, or 2024, or guy that wants to dance with you. Just to be politically correct, since we're talking to Paul. The one guy, like, I just don't want them to hire like a Tom Crean. And I love Michigan. I'm a Michigan fan. I love the Harbaugh family, and he's a direct descendant of the Harbaugh family married into it. He didn't do well at Georgia, and he's been out of the game, and I don't know how well he'll be able to manage the transfer portal and NIL.
I have a fondness for Tom Crean. My wife is an IU grad, and it was right at the IU, like the peak of Tom Crean. So like I get why his name's kicked around, and I do think like he would bring something. Like he's another guy like going to Georgia where football is king, not doing so well at Georgia because football is king. I wouldn't say no, but he's down the list, right? Like,
yeah, but if you're a good enough coach, okay, if you're a good enough coach, you can win anywhere, okay?
Sure.
And you're seeing that in the low mid major. I mean, Will Wade, to bring up Will Wade, McNeese State is like having financial problems in the state, with hurricanes. I mean, he brought this up. The guy is winning.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at Amir Abdul Rahim, USF. Dude, Kennesaw State was garbage, and he turned that around. No offense to Kennesaw State. I mean, it is Georgia, and I love Georgia. But look what he's doing. So if you're a good enough coach, it doesn't matter where you're coaching, you're going to win. I mean, look at what Coach Bruno's done with the women's team. I know we're talking about the men's, but look at what's Coach Bruno's stability and winning. I mean, he hasn't won the national championship, but look at the resources he has, and he continues to win.
No, absolutely. I agree. I mean, but then that kind of goes against the Bobby Hurley and stuff like that. So it's a hard. We end up arguing against ourselves at some point in the whole coach research thing. So, all right. So last question: who do you think will be the next coach of DePaul?
Dave Lato.
3.0.
I guess we can make the joke because we're DePaul people. But
I love Dave Lato. He's a great human being. 1.0 I liked. 1.0 looked lively.
1.0 was good. I mean, 1.0 was something. It was
competitive.
Yeah. But who's your real number one LT, and then Sammy?
Sam, you go first because I'm going to have like 3. So go ahead.
You can't have 3, man. You can't always go back to pick one, man. And you get 3, man. It
should have been Mormon.
No, like if I had to put $10 of my own money on it today,
$10.
That's all I got today. It's all good, man. If I had to put $10 of my own money on it today, I would say Hurley probably has the best odds right now to get offered the job and to accept it.
$10.
Okay, so LT, what about your $10 or 30 since you're gonna have 3?
Dude, he's talking about betting John Rosty like $5,000 in picks, and he's gonna bet $10. You're talking about DePaul.
My NCAA bracket this year is a lot more predictable than the DePaul coaching search. So yeah,
a hot dog under the L for $10 anymore.
Who you got, LT? Pick one.
One. I'm actually going to agree with Sam Woods. I'm going to say Bobby Hurley.
Okay.
I just here's the thing. As long as if they can get close to the NIL number. I think DePaul's NIL right now is capped at like $200,000. I mean,
Depending on who you ask, yeah.
I saw that somewhere. I don't know how much I believe it. I mean, it could have been 50,000 for all I know. But if they can get their NIL number up where Hurley's confident, I think, listen, everybody needs a redemption song, okay? Bob Marley redemption song. And I think for DePaul and Bobby Hurley, you think Catholic kid, scrappy from New Jersey. I don't even know if he's Catholic or not. Might be Jewish for all we know. We'll take everybody at DePaul. But I think Bobby Hurley will make DePaul great again. And I, when I realized it, when I was watching his brother at UConn this weekend, beating the crap out of Marquette, go Huskies. I just, I just worry, and I don't know PV personally. We're supposed to be on the podcast one of these days. I just worry he's just, I hope he gets it right. I pray.
I think just from the little conversations I've had around the area, I think that they're going to get it right. I know we've had, I'm sure you've all had this feeling before that it's going to be right. This one's going to be the next one that, brings us back. But I've said that like 8 times in my lifetime.
LT's texted me or called me like after every single coaching hire the past 20 years. And I'm like, nope. That's not a good one. I wasn't a Stubbs fan when he hired Stubbs. I thought it was the wrong choice.
I was hopeful.
I think I told LT. I was standing in line at the grocery store with my family. I saw the ESPN notification saying Tony Stubblefield is the next head coach, and I was like, "Who?" I looked to my wife and
exactly.
like, yeah, and it was just like out of nowhere.
But what happened with that search? Like, what was he like picking? I know Kenny Payne was, and actually, I was at the Pitt Louisville game this weekend, and I was there in person. And I think if we would have gotten Kenny Payne, we would have been in a better situation than hiring Stubblefield. I think we would have been like,
it would have been a better fit for both people.
I would agree. Yeah. I would agree 100%. No disrespect to Tony. He was very good to me in his time here. I had him on.
You told me he didn't like music. How do you like a guy that doesn't like music?
Yeah. I don't know, but I think that Kenny Payne would have been a better fit. I think that he's got a little bit more cachet with his name. That you could have put out there a little bit more, and his personality. Obviously, it's become a little bit more curmudgeonly over at Louisville lately, but I think out the gate it would have been nice and a little bit more refreshing to have a coach with a little bit more personality in place.
Yeah.
So, hey, thanks guys for taking the time. I look forward to, I'm going to be following you guys, your podcast and your trajectory. It's going up. You guys have all these big names on your show. So it's really,
it's obviously going up because Sam's willing to bet $10 freaking.
I'm going to throw out some large wagers to Rothstein this postseason. But John, you can't get off. I know this is your podcast, but you can't get off that easy without telling us who you think's going to be the coach.
That's a fair point. I skipped over that. Glossed over that.
To the DePaud with your new podcast hosts Luke LP and Sammy D. Hi, Felicia.
Hey, you guys are welcome anytime. But personally, I think I would agree with you both. I should say with Bobby Hurley, and I think that the only difference would be if they could figure out something with Porter Moser's bio, and I don't see that happening. So yeah, Bobby Hurley's the guy in my opinion, and look forward to about a month and a half from now, when April 1st rolls along and people are dropping out of the Selection Sunday, and we'll probably have news shortly thereafter. So
less than a month.
Less than a month. Dream big. There
Dream
it is.
big, baby.
Love that. You got that from Thad?
Got my mug here too, man.
That's what you get for a $10 donation.
Yeah, right. my $10 under the L wager. So
well,
it's all good, man.
Thanks again, guys. I appreciate the time.
John, we appreciate it.
Thanks for having us, John, man. Appreciate it.
Yep.
Yeah, go Demons.
Go Blue Demons. Oh man. Good time. Obviously, at the end there, we all agreed on who we think. Bobby Hurley. I'm going to do that so many times if Bobby Hurley's our coach, mixing up Billy Blue Demon and Bobby Hurley. we all agreed Bobby Hurley, we do think, will be our next head coach at DePaul. It was a good time talking to those guys. So make sure you guys go check out their podcast, Full Court Press Pod. I appreciate them coming on. It was it was really, really fun, really refreshing conversation with those guys. Let's jump into the mailbag questions. You guys sent them in. I appreciate you guys doing that. We'll try to do more and more of those as we go. But yeah, let's do it. Let's talk. Let's see what questions you guys had for us. First up, how much NIL does DePaul need to be competitive in the Big East? Well, this year, I think the number that has been swirling around, it was like 250, 300,000, just bottom tier of the Big East as far as NIL goes. I think there's goals to have 2 to 3 million for next year. I think that's what I've heard. And I think all signs are pointing in a positive direction, especially with the new Blue Grit Collective that allows for tax deductible donations to NIL. So that's a step in the right direction. I think when you talk about numbers, though, I mean, you look at some of the better performing teams, UConn, it's going to be tough to get to their level, but you could definitely compete at like a $2 to $3 million range. That's really where it's probably at in the Big East. That'll get you to that middle to higher tier in the Big East, from what I understand. I know next year Georgetown, I think they said they're shooting for 2 million, or they've already got 2 million. I can't remember exactly what the guys from Georgetown told me, but yeah, I mean, 2 to 3 million, that'll get you guys very competitive on the floor. That'll get us moving in the right direction. That'll give us something to build on. So that's where I see it. I think that target of $2 to $3 million or $3 million is what everyone is shooting for. That's the goal, right? So $2 to $3 million, and we've got ourselves moving in the right direction. Next up, how many transfers versus freshman recruits are likely with a new coach being hired at this point in the process? Depends on the coach. It really does. It depends on what kind of player the coach wants. The coach is good at molding, getting the most out of. I think a lot of times that is forgotten. Everyone thinks that we could just flip it around. We'll get into that as far as with someone else's question here, but it depends on the coach. What kind of player is best fitting for that coach? What kind of coach we get in is going to determine how many transfers or freshman recruits. I think a lot of times you get a mix these days. You're going to get 2 to 3 transfers and 2 to 3 freshmen, maybe 50-50, 60-40, something like that. But it depends on the coach. I think with a Bobby Hurley, you'll see more freshmen to start, and well, I don't know. Maybe you'll see more transfers. Depends on where our NIL is. So it all depends. All these things play off of each other. More to come there, I would say. Just we got to see who we hire, and we could get back to that question. I'll revisit it on another mailbag. All right, this one is one I get a lot. Would it be possible to move some men's games to McGrath, similar to Seton Hall and St. John's? Talk to someone in the athletic department about this. I wanted to make sure that I got the right answer for you all. And the answer was the athletic department wants to do some more things like this, where, there's a student only game or something similar to that. And it's definitely on their radar. It's definitely something that they want to do to build and foster that relationship between the student body and the men's basketball program, between the student body and the basketball and athletics, really. It's not just the men's basketball program. But yeah, there's definitely some of that on their radar. And I think that they just have to make sure that they're meeting other obligations as well. But yeah, more to come there. I definitely would keep your ear out for that, because it would be fun to do some sort of like first game or something like that. We're on campus, students only, midnight madness type of feel, build that culture within the university, within the university and with the student body. Definitely see the value in that. And I know that the athletic department does as well. So more to come there. Stand by. Definitely keep your ear out. Keep asking that question. It's something they're interested in. All right. Regardless of who we hire, what's our realistic goal for year one? I think this is our last question, actually. What's our realistic goal for year one? I'll say this. Cautionary tale, St. John's this year. They got Rick Pitino, one of the biggest names in head coaching. Look where they're at. It just all depends. It's possible to flip it around in 1 year. It's highly improbable that would happen. So while, everyone wants to jump in and say, okay, this next coach, we got him, we got our guy, and we're going to be good next year. We're going to be middle of the pack. We're definitely getting in the tournament. That's what St. John's did all summer. All summer, that's all you heard. St. John's, they're going to be a force to be reckoned with. St. John's, Rick Pitino says, I'm going to jump in the East River if we don't win a championship. Year one, he's struggling. He flipped that whole team on its head. I mean, there's, all brand new players except for one. So if Rick Pitino is doing that and having struggles, we're going to have that. You're going to have those growing pains. You're trying to build a culture. That's the most important thing. You're trying to build a culture of winning, and a culture of camaraderie, a team that gels together, that actually gels together. So yeah, I mean, realistic expectations. I'd be floored if we got to the 7th seed in the Big East. I'd be thrilled with an 8 seed. I'd be okay with a 9, 10. I don't want to finish last. You can't finish last. I don't want to finish 10th really either. But I'm going to give this next coach some grace. So yeah, I don't know. I mean, expectations, we'll see. We'll see who the coach is. We'll see how much recruiting that can be done to build a team. How many players they have to turn over. We don't know who's coming back. So we'll see. That's my answer for pretty much all these questions, which is hilarious. But we'll try to get some more concrete answers as this coaching search progresses and see where things land. But yeah, I think that there's still, I mean, it's only February. But we'll see where everything lands. I mean, there's still a lot of time in this coaching search. We'll see what happens. A lot of names flying, a lot of rumors flying, swirling. The carousel starts spinning. You don't know who's going to be available and who's not at some point. So you got to hope that there's a handshake deal or something like that as we get later into the coaching search season. So we'll see, and we'll continue to bring you guys more content. Make sure you guys follow us on Twitter. Definitely follow us on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. Get all that content flowing. If you want to DM me at the DePaud on Twitter, we'll get you into our big DePaul group chat. There's about 45, 46 people. It's a great time. We're talking all things coaching search, players, everything like that. We're talking during the games, all that fun stuff. Get in there, have some fun with us, meet the other Blue Demon fans that are online, and definitely have some fun with this coaching search because it's a good time. Until next time, until we get you guys some more information on this coaching search, until our next interview or episode, whatever happens next, we'll keep you guys posted. Follow us online. And let's go Blue Demons.